That's the sound of, I don't know, a spaceship. I just made it up. All right. Any Era by Harry Martinson. We're slowly coming to suspect that the space we're traveling in is of a different sort from what we thought whenever that word space was decked out by our fantasies on Earth. We're coming to suspect now that our drift is even deeper than we first believed. That knowledge is a blue naivete, which, with a measured quantity of insight, imagine that the mystery has structure. We now suspect that what we claim as space and glassy clarity around any era as whole is spirit, everlasting and impalpable, that we have strayed in spiritual seas. All right, that sounded absolutely beautiful. I will read maybe one more. Um,
It was
so,
nice.
Crashdown by Emma Osborne. Call to me, plugged and quivering as I am. I'm yours. You're scattering. I'm a full thrust and heaving creak of outer skin. It's my fuselage that drums, a bent twist and yank at the entry. You steer, you always have. And I'm peppered with dirt from the last world, the lost world. We've just left it, and already it doesn't exist. I've dropped from the black float. Here is the fall, terminal and swift. It shakes my bolts, tapping threads to unwinding, though everything is bending deep like a blind trip into a forever of nothing more until we hit dirt and I cling shuddering to the Lord. I think what that entails is a perspective from a spaceship leaving one
Yeah,
planet and going to another one. Um,
this is pretty
personification,
cool.
indeed. So this category is actually called, if there is a category, it's called science fiction poetry. and yeah, so it is pretty cool. And now, what is actually, like, who's actually talking though? You might be wondering.
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I always wonder about that.
Okay. All right. So it's me, Shen. Um. Well, you can, whatever acronym.
But
Not.
but what is this?
Yeah. All right. Okay. 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 We'll get into that. The disembodied voice in the background is preempting me, saying SG2 Space, the only weekly space show. Granted, we had a delayed start to the start of 2024. We're finally getting back on track.
Yeah,
So,
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to everybody. It's been about 2 weeks now if you're watching this live, episode 201. And this, so what else? Yeah, you can catch us YouTube, look for SG2 on Space. I have to say, you can go on patreon.com/SG2 on Space. And thank you for Kyle Baker, Sam Welsh, and John Graves for your kindly monthly donations. I will keep that ticker running at the bottom. And of course, I also mentioned Atumra, who was my who pretty much helped the show for a number of times. And somebody is doing a very annoying thing. Dr. Leonard, if you want to change your title from Doctor of Love, I will gladly do it.
No, that's fine. I didn't even. Did you put that there?
What did he
What?
just do?
Oh, I have this little laser. It's a pen laser, and I can shine it. If I'm real careful, I can shine it at the camera. It'll be there. So
Oh,
now that won't harm you because it won't. It's a very low power laser, and can you still see? Can everyone see? I've blinded everyone.
no, I was able to see it. It's just, I guess I shouldn't be surprised by anything you do, actually. Who's gonna say?
Yep.
Yeah. So, with your signature headband, it cannot be anybody else. Like it cannot be imposter. So
No. Yeah, that's probably yeah. Yep.
right.
I'm wearing my hoodie tonight. It's a cold day in Houston.
Oh yeah. So for people who may not be watching this live, realize that today the temperature in Houston has dropped to 30 degrees Fahrenheit or less,
Wow.
actually. Uh, yeah. So, but thankfully, we are cozy inside since we are not doing the show outdoors. I don't think we've ever done the show outdoors, so that really doesn't change anything. But just saying. So going on to the topic here, decided to. So I read some science fiction poetry now for those who were paying attention earlier. Um, and I just brought up since I'm interested in reading fiction as well as nonfiction, and for fiction I read a lot of genre fiction, like science fiction, and I enjoy watching movies and whatnot. So
Me
I
too.
figured with Leonard has some historical knowledge as well of well, you brought things up, so figured
Yep.
we'd throw this topic out there. And if things get too boring, we'll talk about other things like what's
Well,
happening this year,
it,
for instance.
it's just a conversation.
Yeah. So Leonard, what is the first sci-fi you read or watched?
The you mean growing up the first sci-fi, or the first sci-fi that the earliest sci-fi, or both?
Okay. Yeah, actually, that's yeah. It was an ambiguous question, so
Yeah.
why not
I,
both? So
I
so
can I can tell you I think that as a child I was very much into science fiction, and probably the earliest science fiction was on television as a child, and there was a show that many people know about. It was called The Twilight Zone, which is sort of science fiction, and then there was another show called The Outer Limits, and
I've
I,
actually
I
seen both, I think.
yeah, and I think so that they were famous shows in the early '60s, about '63. Well, the Twilight Zone emerged from the late 1950s, and I think it lasted until about 1965. And um, Outer Limits, I'm not sure, up to about 1966 or so. But I can tell you the first science fiction movie I saw in the theater.
Yes, this will give people an indication of the era you grew up in.
Yes. So this is the first science fiction movie that I saw in the theater. It was in 1968, and it was a movie with Charlton Heston called The Planet of the Apes.
That was the original one.
The original one. Yes.
I don't think I've seen the original one, but
Oh, well, I don't want to spoil the ending for you. So,
uh,
but so there was a lot of movies, but I was, I was reading Isaac Asimov, who was one of my favorites, and I believe that I have read a tremendous amount of Isaac Asimov. Yeah, that's it. Planet of the Apes.
oh my
It's
gosh, should I
yeah.
watch at some point? I don't know.
Well, yeah, I think it's kind of I've gone back and forth whether I like the movie or not like the movie. Technically, there's something cinematically wrong with it. It seems to be rushed a little bit, and but it's
Wow.
I found out where this is
Funny.
filmed. This scene,
Yeah.
this particular scene was filmed at a place called Point Dume, Dume, just under the cliffs of Malibu, California. And I have it on my to-do list. Like my minor bucket list. It's sort of like my thimble list of things to just go there and check it out, because it's a place you can, it's a beach you can go to. So, but anyway, I didn't know whether you wanted to go into all of that, but I read a lot of Isaac Asimov. Isaac Asimov went through a kind of he came up with a story called I, Robot, and he ended up with like it's almost like a continuum. All of his works are a continuum that started from um, I guess in the 40s, 30s, and 40s, when late 30s, 40s, when he started writing about these science fiction stories, and it built
Well,
up to a
is I Robot a short story?
it's
No.
yeah, it's a rather short, it's a short novel. It's probably 100 pages,
Okay.
something like that. But he ended up with a story called The Foundation, and it's a introduced this idea of psychohistory, and the idea that once human populations had spread throughout the galaxy, um, it's almost like there was elements of of predictability, or it's almost like human civilization could be predicted because of the large numbers of human civilizations. Um,
Psychohistory. That's what you're talking
so
about.
right, psychohistory, and so I don't exactly know. I don't really quite have the words to explain it, but that that there was so much the history became deterministic once the number of civilizations and humanity spread out all through the galaxy in many different planets and solar systems, and once there was hundreds of millions of them throughout the galaxy, then history became deterministic because it was like a thermodynamic, in much the same way that the the evolution of molecules in a gas can be aggregated together as a thermodynamic quantity. He proposed that history could be done that way.
I always thought that was really interesting how you can use the law of statistics just like looking at gas molecules.
Well, I don't know that you actually can do that, but that was
Okay,
Asimov's idea, and in
right,
fact,
right. Not saying that in reality you could predict the future, but
yeah.
it's just
So
kind of
um, I
conceptual possibility.
I
Yeah.
I think Asimov didn't consider the notion of chaos and chaotic attractors and order, ordering, natural ordering of things that would occur. He also, one of the characters in the series was a character called, it was very peculiar. It was called the Mule, and he was a mutant. It was one individual who was a mutant, and he could read minds. In other words, he was able to manipulate people, and so he kind of broke the symmetry or broke the thermodynamic progression of history. So he was a bug in the system, as it were, and he's called the Mule. But anyway, everyone should read the Foundation.
You should, really should. I'm
Yeah.
gonna agree with that testimony because I have read the Foundation series and I really
So,
enjoyed it.
am I remembering it right? it's it's
The
it.
Mule?
Yeah. Do you remember
Yeah,
the character? Yeah. Okay.
yeah. He's
So
is genetically sterile, uh, and I don't know. I mean, what you just said. I don't
yeah.
remember enough to know what exactly he did, but I know he was essentially
Well,
good.
he was sort of like a kind of like a wrench in the system, as it were, because he ended up being able to direct history because of his ability to influence minds and so forth. So, but you know, all this, there was other books in the 30s by I guess people know about Aldous Huxley, who wrote a book called Brave New World, and this was like a dystopian novel, and in it he postulated that um, it was like a dystopian future
Yeah,
where humans were engineered. In other words, you were engineered by a chemical treatment of your, the egg as you're developing. Everyone was born in a kind of a creche, a artificial womb, and so you were raised completely. Your future was completely determined by the state, and they even manipulated, your how intelligent you were, because there were many jobs, like elevator operators and menial jobs were filled by people who had been degraded. They were,
they
and
were
so
purposely made to be inferior in the
that's
womb.
right. Yeah, so
Yeah,
that's pretty
it's like
chilling,
everybody's like genetically made, and they have a specific purpose, and that's what they do for the rest of their lives.
Yeah. So, and they were called epsilon. Sometimes you'll hear the term epsilon moron. Somebody's an
Right.
epsilon moron, and that's somebody who's like
Right.
kind of foolish or
You
stupid.
stratify society based on these genetic modifications, and the top level are what, alphas, right? And
I yes. Uh-huh.
yeah, so from what I recall, since this was, I don't know if it was a favorite book of mine, but I enjoyed it enough. Well, I didn't really like the ending, but I enjoyed the possibility, and I don't know, I entertained it enough that I do remember some parts where essentially this society at least decided that it is not good for every person to be operating at their full capacity. They did an experiment where they put a bunch of alphas on like an island or something, and then they quickly went to
Uh-huh.
war with each other. So the global order of people decided that society is most
So
stable and happy for everyone when you just artificially make people inferior than others and have this
right.
gratification.
So, and I'm not sure that Aldous Huxley didn't actually believe that. So you can go on YouTube and find some television interviews of Aldous Huxley, where he
Indeed.
will, yeah, they were he was of that order of that generation that came up. Really, after World War One, he might have been considered like lost generation. Then after World War Two, they were very cynical about the future of humanity because of the um, nuclear weapons. And but we're still here. Um,
There's a lot
so
of dystopian sci-fi for sure because
uh,
people always want to imagine, not always want to, but it's easy to propagate the problems of today and see a future
yeah,
which is even worse, right?
yeah. So those are some of the science fiction that I've
What
experienced. And
what's the first
um,
what's going back to the other question, what's the first science fiction, like not you,
in
just in general?
the first science fiction. Okay, so this is interesting. I did a little research on this, and I actually come across this some years ago, and I since there was a Roman in Roman times, in the second century A.D., in the area of Syria near the Euphrates River, under the Roman Empire, there was a guy named um, Lucian of Samosata, and or you could say Lucian, Lucian of Samosata. I think he wrote in Greek, but he wrote a story called A True Story, and it's a wild ride. I mean, it's just he has um, people that set out in a boat, a ship, right? And they I think they travel past what they call Pillars of Hercules, which is where the 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 Mediterranean enters the Atlantic Ocean, and they go through there and they go out and they sail. They go to a land. They go to a land where there are rivers of wine. So there's a creek or river that has wine, and so they follow the river upstream until they come to these trees that are like feminine, sexy feminine uh, women on the top, above, but their feet are rooted in the earth, so they're like trees. And so as soon as the men see them, they touch them, and then they become entangled with them, and they 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 actually try to have sex with them, and they get
Wow. I
yeah.
wonder what
And so
you were thinking when you wrote this.
yeah, and so they try to have sex with these female um, alien things that are planted in the earth, and then they become part of it. So it's like they connect. They get connected down there, and then it connects together, and then they grow into it. And so I'm surprised they haven't made a movie out of this. But and so then later, I don't know the whole story. I actually listened to it on audio the other day, and then the ship sails. So he rescues the rest of his men. He loses a few men in this to these creatures, and then they sail off, and there's this storm, and the storm has the wind that picks up the whole boat, the whole ship, and it flies up into the into the air, because they thought space had air in it, and it sailed all the way to the moon. They didn't even know where they were at first, and then they landed on the moon, and the aliens on the moon come out, and it turns out the aliens on the moon are having a war with the aliens on the sun, and then something about Venus is involved. And so it's really quite a wild ride for a story that was written 1900 years ago. So and my understanding is that people actually like this story a lot, and He also wrote some other kinds of fantastic stories like this. He my understanding is he's hard to read because there's a lot of topical satire in it. So there's a there's a lot of um, contemporary, from his point of view, idioms about things that are going on, and so people, it's kind of hard to understand a lot of what's going on in the novel. But it's all sort of a satire. What he's trying to do is, it's believed that what he was trying to do was poke fun at authors who would write about fantastic lands in distant lands when they didn't know anything about what they were writing about, but they were just writing about it in order to, make a name for themselves, and they make a living, with these fantastic stories. And so he was trying to do go to the complete extreme. So he titled his book True History, but in the beginning, in the preamble to it, he says this book is a complete fabrication. There's nothing at all true about this. And so anyway, that's thought to be, by some scholars and people, to be really the first science fiction. Um, I observed that he had, yeah, in ancient times, it was never clear to me that people, when they looked up at the moon or at the sun, that it was like a place. I always felt like, or I always was under the impression that in ancient times, people thought of the elements in space. And I think we've mentioned this before, like when we were talking about Galileo, that the moon, the planets, were not really places. They were something at a higher level, a higher plane of existence. And he's talking about it, as he's writing about it, as though they are its actual places. Like the way, in the modern sense of the way we think about it. And that's I want to say that's at least interesting. That's
Uh, okay, go ahead. What do
well,
you mean?
the reason I say that is that I think for the most part in ancient times
Hmm.
there were no telescopes. Okay.
Right.
The human eye cannot even discern anything on the moon. And the moon is right close. All of us have looked at the moon with our eyes, and we can see that there's some shapes there, gray, different color shapes, and but it was only when Galileo really looked at it with a telescope that he could see that I just used the expression, he saw that it was a place like on Earth, meaning that he saw mountains and different structures that were on the moon that he could relate to. And likewise, when he looked at Saturn, he could see some kind of structure and little and Jupiter had the famous moons. He could see, and I'm talking about Galileo now, who came in the 16th century, right? Many hundreds of years later, over 1,000 years later, really. Um, but in ancient times, it's hard for me to believe that people had that notion, the same notion that we have today, because there was no experience of being able to look at even the moon
So
with a
you,
telescope.
you're saying they could not. You're saying they couldn't even fathom like a place like that actually existing in reality.
Right, as a place. And yet Lucian, he talks about it that way. He talks about it going and landing on the moon as though, you know, maybe,
As if we, I mean, obviously his
yep,
description of the moon is wildly different than what we see, but at least
that's true.
it's the notion of a real
It,
place.
it was a place, and there were aliens there, right? And in fact, I think the king of the moon was a human who had gotten there and spoke Greek, surprisingly. Uh, for by and I don't know what the mechanism that took the king there. But he was a human, and he was the king of the moon. And they were at war with the sun. So the sun was a place, and it had aliens on it. And so it's
I mean,
it's
why not?
it's
You
it's
know,
it's it's very interesting. I think it's interesting. So This was, and again, I want to mention that the whole purpose of this story was one, I think, to be entertaining, just like any kind of book, any storyteller, to entertain people, but also to kind of poke fun at fantastical travel logs that people would write about distant lands. There were historians who were writing about the islands in the Atlantic Ocean.
I mean, so like back in the day, there were plenty of unexplored areas in the world,
right?
And they could make up all sorts of stories.
They could make up sea serpents and
all of it. And yeah, there were plenty of stories that. Now, the distinguishment between this particular novel, A True Story, is that it talks about aliens in outer space as if they're real.
Yes, that's right.
Instead of the typical, the traveler goes to this weird foreign land and these people are like monstrous creatures or whatever. Like that happens a lot. Like people like that in ancient times wrote a bunch of those stories.
Yes, yes, that's true. Yes.
But this is like taking it extended further. Like, wow, we're in space.
Yeah, it was certainly meant to be a satire. So
yeah.
And so that's I kind of wanted to talk about that one a little bit because I thought that was pretty cool.
Have you read it?
I didn't read it. I listened to it on an audio tape. Somebody did audio on YouTube, and I listened to it just recently, like about a week ago.
Huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess there's a lot of literary analysis into this as well. That's for sure. I mean, you described some of it, but
yeah.
So
and he came from the place that we would call Iraq today.
Right.
So, but at that time they called it Syria.
Syria, yeah.
Yeah, but he wrote in Greek, in ancient Greek.
This was written like over about 2,000 years ago or something.
Not quite 2,000 years ago. Second century.
That's like that's almost 2 millennia, I will say. No, not quite. Maybe 1,900 years.
Yes,
about
like that.
So we've been clearly writing science fiction for a while now, right?
Yeah.
So
I mean, some of the stories in the Bible could be considered something like science fiction.
So, can I tell you some weird views I have? I mean, I think some parts of the Bible describing angels and whatnot are aliens. I just expressed it.
Okay.
Like.
Okay. You think they're aliens? I'm not judging.
You're not judging.
I'm not judging.
I mean, I don't want to point out specific.
Well, there is something called simulation hypothesis. Have we talked about the simulation hypothesis?
Yeah. Well, I mean, okay, so I just want to briefly mention, like, when since in the Bible there's frequent things about like stuff that comes from the sky, right? And then occasionally there's descriptions of these beings or these vehicles. Like, wasn't what's his name, Elijah the prophet, right? Who saw this fireball thingamajig or whatever it was in the sky. Was it Ezekiel? There you go. And I was like, this is just like, I just imagine a bunch of people looking at this, seeing, this man getting taken up by this strange vehicle, but they don't know what a flying machine or vehicle is.
It certainly sounds like a pretty fantastical story. So
go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I have to mention this. It's not exactly science fiction, but there is this thing called simulation hypothesis that is very popular with people. It's sort of similar to these ideas about multiple universes and so forth. But the idea is that that our reality is synthetic. In other words, it's almost like the Matrix. The story of the Matrix, where there's this guy Neo, and he's in a vat or something, and he's connected up, and
that's science fiction right there.
Well, yeah. So it's some kind of implausible theory that the controlling influence is using the energy from the bodies somehow, and but anyway, he has a reality that is completely artificial. It's just plugged into the sensory apparatus of his physiology,
You're
and
talking
then
about the
he
yeah.
escapes from it, right? And so he finds out about the real reality, and there's the red and the green, red and blue pill. Is it a blue pill or a red?
It's blue pill,
I think
red
it's a
and
blue
blue.
pill or a red pill, and that kind of thing. So the universe is, so that kind of stimulated this idea that there's a simulation, that actually our reality, you and I, are avatars, and that we're just subroutines that are running in the computer program of a super advanced being, right?
Yes,
And
that. Go ahead.
and
So
I want to say, and the super advanced being is running this computer program for some purpose, apparently, right? And they can even like intervene in history and change things from time to time. Like they can change the value. Like when we're running a program, we can change the value of a variable
right,
arbitrarily.
and because we're running the program from outside the program,
Right.
time doesn't really exist
That
for us.
Yeah, that's right. So it's all, so everything is synthetic, in our reality, and so the first time I heard this, probably about, I don't know, 12 years ago, I thought, well, that's the story of Genesis in the Bible.
Can you explain
And
that?
and when I said, what? How can that be? Well, there's this super advanced being, right? And he creates a simulation, okay? And we're the simulation. And from time to time he intervenes in history, what we experience as history, but he just intervenes, and maybe he'll I don't know, make the waters of the Red Sea part, just for laughs. And Genesis is a Bronze Age story that represents a simulation hypothesis. Um, and I kind of want to set up that table at the college campus, with the sign says Genesis is a simulation hypothesis. Prove me wrong. You know, um, but I don't believe in the simulation hypothesis. I think it's ludicrous. I don't know. I don't understand the idea that um, uh, you know a computer. I think that a computer that could run our universe would have to be the universe. It would have to. That's how complex it would have to be. And also, I think we would
I
notice.
actually, I mean, I definitely can see how you, you're saying you don't believe in the simulation theory.
I don't think so. I think it's a metaphysical,
Right.
psychological phenomenon, and in fact, it's the same psychological phenomenon that gave rise to the Genesis story.
So
There's some.
Go ahead. I'm just going to put this now.
There is some, and I'm not an expert on. I wish I was. I wish I knew more about psychology and psycho. Well, really, the notion that the character Harry Seldon in the Foundation um, uh, trilogy understood psychohistory. I wish there was something like that, and you could predict certain kinds of things that human civilizations come up with, because I think that there are patterns, and that's one of them. I think this idea of a simulation hypothesis, or a Genesis story, a creation story, um, where you appeal to some super advanced being or beings that control or create your reality, it's a
for right
one of
now,
the.
there's a lot of science fiction out there about that, right? Like you
Yeah,
mentioned, The
right.
Matrix as a classic
and,
example.
and we've talked about Carl Jung before also, and I think Carl Jung would, if he was around, I think he'd be fascinated with that. I think he would say something to us about some kind of inner archetypal or collective
Right.
collective. Um, I can't remember what the terminology is, but
Collective
these,
consciousness,
yeah,
or
like
whatever.
something like a collective consciousness, or collective unconscious,
Okay.
because of our biology, and it generates this kind of thing, and the notion that it's so out, when I say that a Genesis is a simulation hypothesis.
So you're basically saying, okay,
I mean,
go on.
to me, it's so obvious. I mean, it's just absolutely obvious that it's the same thing. But when I say it to the people who believe in this or who want to promote this simulation hypothesis, they don't get it. It's it's like talking to they look at me like I have three heads.
Well, I mean, you might have three heads, and they're hiding the other two.
Yeah, no, I have one. This is the only one I have right here. So, but on my planet, we have one head, just like here. That's why we love you so much.
See, you're you make jokes about all that. One day I might discover you're actually an alien.
I know some people are a little bit disturbed. I am an alien.
If Genesis is a simulation hypothesis, if Genesis in the Bible, the first book of the Bible, in terms of how God created everything and essentially like just set up the world, so to speak. I mean,
right.
How else do you describe it?
Yeah, at least in the Western idea, the Judeo-Christian this set of ideas that we have in the Western world, the idea is that God made the world and he just like let it. It's like clockwork. So he made the world and then it runs. Okay, and so that's not universal. There are traditions where they say, well, it's being controlled at every moment. Every moment that occurs is being created. So some people think that, but in the idea that I'm thinking about, it's a simulation. So it's a clockwork, as it were, that has been created on at a certain point in time, and then it runs, and then people are made, created, and planted in here. So that's what we're looking at. We're looking at a collective unconscious archetype.
By the way, going back to the topic of science fiction, this is great that you brought it up because we can link it to something else. Simulation theory is great. There's a lot of movies and stuff out there talks about it, like various portrayals. The Matrix. Hopefully people have seen it. Truman Show. Well, that's not really simulation theory. That's
well, we can see how it's related though.
Yeah, like your world, your life is fake, basically.
Oh, Source Code.
That's really one of my like that movie. Have you ever seen it?
Too. Yeah, I did too.
Yeah, it's a great movie.
So tell us the story of the Source Code. Do you remember it?
So from what I recall, this guy wakes up and he has a few minutes to find this bomb, and basically he keeps dying because the bomb keeps going off, and when he dies, it loops back. So he's giving another chance, and so eventually he figures it out.
Yeah, one of the key things is that actually he is a person. He is a helicopter pilot in Afghanistan, and he's just got blown up.
Away the plot. If you want to know the plot.
Well, that's not really spoiling it exactly because they tell you that right away. But so we won't tell you. We won't tell the end. But he keeps getting reborn. His whole goal is to try to find this bomb, a terrorist bomb on a train in Chicago, and there's a girl involved, and he only has 8 minutes to live over and over again, and then he gets. So anyway, watch this movie. It's really good, and that's
I just
what this actor too. I think is really good. Kirkendall or
what's his name again? Yeah, he's in a bunch of like movies and things.
Oh yeah, you see him everywhere.
Yeah. Okay. Source Code is not that well known compared to obviously I mentioned The Matrix and Truman Show. Also, people have probably seen Inception. That was a big hit back in 2010. The Dream Within a Dream one.
Okay.
Into that.
I didn't see that one, but yeah.
If you haven't seen it, you might like it actually, since you So it's pretty good. I have not seen The 13th Floor.
No, I haven't seen that either.
Apparently, a computer scientist owns a VR simulation, 1937 LA. People in reality aren't aware they're not real and are computer programs instead. This sounds really
when that
Yeah, I hate it when that happens. When you find out you're not real.
I mean, what would you do if you find out you're not like real?
I don't know. Probably take some kind of pill. Probably. I don't know.
Oh my God. Oh man.
Mushrooms.
This one, have you seen it?
No.
Existence. VR game design create a game called this when you're actually living experience, but it's not. What if you lose your reality after a while, unable to tell if you're still in the game or in real life? Well, I
Yeah.
guess if you're in VR all the time, maybe you do lose that kind of.
Maybe. Yeah. Yeah.
This one, Ready Player One. Have you seen that one?
I've
That
heard
one?
of it. I haven't seen it. No.
So
No.
people in 2045 go into virtual reality universes called Oasis to escape from their real lives. That seems like a common theme these days because our real lives apparently are terrible, and so you just go into the VR headset.
Yeah. I wish people could snap out of it.
But in this
Because
game,
your life really isn't terrible compared to.
I don't. I'm just saying that like the fact that virtual reality, like there's like in there's a number of movies out there like Ready Player One, for instance, or in some other ones where VR becomes like the dominant place that people spend most of their time in.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Dark City, I really like this movie. If you have not seen this, Leonard, you have not seen it, have you?
No, I haven't.
You should watch it. I was
All right, check it out.
So I really not support. I really liked Dark City. I guess it's probably not that well known either.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the first I think probably one of the first film science fiction was a movie called Metropolis, and that was also a dystopian. That was a silent era film.
Oh, I've heard of that one.
And I think a lot of people have seen probably, if you haven't seen it, then you've seen some of it in some of the video of Queen, where the music video from Queen where they do Lady
and Westworld. Okay.
And so forth. So there was a movie in the 50s, early 50s, called
The Day the Earth Stood Still.
Oh yeah, that's a pretty famous one.
That's one that if you're into the genre of science fiction, that's something that you really do need to see. Metropolis is also quite a good film. It's silent though, so you need an attention span.
So people of I guess of a certain generation, including mine, I guess, better be warned.
But yeah. So yeah, you have to read it and
what was the other one you said? Metropolis and the Day the Earth Stood Still.
Day the Earth Stood Still. I'm trying to think of other sci-fi in the 1930s. Frankenstein. The story of Frankenstein could be considered science fiction, and that was written in the early 19th century by I don't know, 19-year-old girl, 19, 20-year-old girl named Mary Shelley. It's a pretty amazing imagination.
The Earth Stood Still.
The Day the Earth Stood Still.
Oh wait, this is the new version. Oops. Okay, you got
No. That one should be banned.
Okay, fine. I should not be promoting that one.
Yeah,
Is that one awful? I haven't seen either version.
Yeah, that one's awful. But the first one is really quite good. The character, the astronaut from the alien from outer space is actually a human who has been, he's human, but he's an alien.
Watch the 1951 version of the movie, basically.
Michael Rene is Mr. Carpenter, and Carpenter. There's various like allusions to Christ-like.
Wow! Alien lands in DC and tells the people of Earth that they must live peacefully or be destroyed as a danger to other planets. So 1951 version much better than the one that's made 60 years later.
Absolutely. Try not to try to avoid the one that they but this is this really is a fine film all the way from top to bottom. I mean, it'll be a little bit stilted, from our point of view because of the the change in times and different attitudes. But
like all these old movies in a sense are, might be considered a little stilted. Right?
Yeah. Now, Forbidden Planet, that's another one. That was in 56 or 57. And that tells this, it's actually a story of the Tempest in Shakespeare. So that there's this mad scientist and he's on a planet, right? And he's trying to warn, this ship is approaching and he's trying to warn it off. And he has I can't tell this, I can't give anything away, but there's a monster that is appearing, and the source of the monster is sort of a twist at the end there. Walt Disney had a little bit to do with that film. It had who is that actor? The third from the left.
Jack
Leslie Nielsen. Leslie Nielsen, who really made a career after the movie Airplane, where we found out that he's actually a comic actor. But in this one, he plays it straight up, and the whole feel of it is very real. Anne Francis is a character in there, and she was an actress that nobody's ever heard of except old people like me, and Leslie Nielsen, you know about him. So it kind of inspired the Star Trek. I would say that it has that look and feel to it to a certain extent. But I don't want to give anything away. It's also a very excellent film. It's in color, and it has Robbie the robot. There's an iconic robot in the film who's played by a robot of some sort. So
you mean played by a human of some sort?
Well, I think there's a human inside the suit. It looks like a difficult. Yeah.
Like this.
Yeah,
thing?
there it is. Yeah. Yes.
Wow.
And this actor here is also famous, and he's lost my I've lost his
this guy.
Don't remember. Walter Pidgeon. Yeah. Walter Pidgeon. So, and nobody's ever heard of him, but except for old people. And,
well, if you're gonna put yourself in that category,
well, I have to. I'm 430 years old. So, but
Leonard, being 430 years old, knows all these actors from the 1950s.
So anyway, that's sci-fi. You should see this one. These are like must see. If you're a sci-fi fan, these are all must-see films that you have to see.
I think most of these films I have not seen.
Yeah,
I may want to watch it. Now these films, they're not based on books, right? They're actually
the story in Forbidden Planet is very similar to, if you know about the story of the Tempest from Shakespeare.
Yes, I do. But my point is, we started out talking about novels and books, but
but it's just a conversation. And we've been talking more than half an hour, and we could just keep on talking about this stuff. So.
Well, I mean, we don't have to. There's a lot out there. I mean, obviously, people are always speculating about possible futures and every, like all the time.
So I guess the last film that we ought to talk, if we're going to talk about films, the last one is 2001: Space Odyssey.
Oh yeah, we should. Of course, also H.G. Wells. Don't forget that one.
If you want to talk about H.G. Wells. So in the 19th century, H.G. Wells wrote. He was sort of a pioneer of more or less modern science fiction, and so he had the Time Machine, and which is like a fame. I as a child I read all these books, all the H.G. Wells books, and they're very readable. Like they really are readable, like a child can read them. Well, maybe maybe children today can't read them, but
I,
but but
yes, if you're able to read,
if you're
like,
H.G. Wells, this was only 130 years ago, and you know
by the
you
way,
can.
all classic novels you can find them on Project Gutenberg. Did you know that?
Oh yeah, they're all public domain. Sure.
Yeah.
So read this. Yeah, read the Time Machine. He also wrote Food of the Gods, which was an
What is
interesting
that?
story. That was a story about a scientist that had invented a way of making animals huge.
Like giant animals?
Yeah, I may not have the name right. It's Food of the Gods, and I think it's H.G. Wells. And see if you can figure out which one I'm talking about.
Yep, Food of the Gods.
Food of the Gods, and so where there's these giant animals, and then he wrote a story called Jules Verne. Jules Verne wrote a book about the 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, and it's about like this super advanced submarine, and it very much resembles like a nuclear kind of submarine. There's a character called Nemo, which is, like no, not me. I think Nemo means not me, or not a man, not something like that. And the captain of the ship, is out to destroy all of the
Now, just
warships.
context, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea was written when?
1861, I think, or two.
So it was written in the 19th century, right?
Yeah.
And they were already thinking about, I don't know.
Well, he didn't know about nuclear propulsion, but it sure does resemble a nuclear submarine. The idea that it derives its energy from some
Jules
kind of
Verne
mysterious.
originally, I can't say, he's a French writer, right?
He was French, yeah, and he wrote in French, but you can read it in translation. And I read it as a child. I still
Journey to the Center of the Earth. I've read that one too. Around the World in 80 Days. Read that.
Yeah.
A lot of the classics, really.
And one of my favorites, Mysterious Island.
I have never read that one.
Mysterious Island. So it's the story. It's set in the American Civil War time, and there's a balloon that is being used as an observation balloon. It's a hydrogen-filled balloon, and a number of Union soldiers and a Confederate and a black man and are on this balloon. He's either a soldier or I think he's a soldier, and so they get taken away to an island, and on the island there are giant animals and things like that. And it turns out that it's sort of a sequel to 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea.
You can read this entirety
and,
on the website.
And it was made into a fairly excellent film in 1961.
You would recommend it?
I would recommend Mysterious Island, the film Mysterious Island. I would not. There have been a couple of remakes of it, and I would avoid all of them.
For the most part, Leonard is going to always encourage the viewer to watch the original.
Not necessarily, but generally I do.
So before we end this, so to say, you were going to talk about the C. Clarke art, like where?
Oh, so 2001. Everyone knows about Arthur C. Clarke, and so you should read Childhood's End and all of the things. I learned a lot from Arthur C. Clarke. I think the space elevator, not the space elevator, the space elevator concept that I got. But 2001 is a very cerebral story about aliens that have made a kind of, it appears that they have made some kind of presence in our solar system, and they have left clues to it. Either they have influenced our evolution, or they are warning us, or something. And it's a very cerebral, I would say abstract plot. So you have to watch this, and it's a rather long film.
I
It
remember
has
watching this and getting really tired of how slow it was.
well, that's a problem with people today.
Uh,
That
I mean,
I'm not sure what to do about that, except that you should try. My opinion is you should try to develop a longer attention span because you you. So
I,
anyway, if you're going to watch the film, um, remember that it is an abstract. It's that the plot the movie itself is completely realistic. Okay, it's hyper realistic, and the special effects hold up perfectly even today. Okay, even the monkeys, even the apes here. How are apes in there? Well, see, this is like 2.5 million years before present, and the aliens are influencing, or they're
yeah,
something.
they made some of the apes more intelligent. That's what happened, right?
That's one interpretation. Yes, that is an interpretation.
That's
But
my
so the imagery, the special effects. There's a director called Stanley Kubrick who directed this, and it's absolutely perfect technically. I think I can't think of it.
Look at
The
that.
yeah the spaceship is circular and it's rotating, and there's artificial gravity and suspended animation and to get to Jupiter and so forth. But the idea is that it's perfect from that standpoint, but the plot itself is an abstraction, and so you should sit down and watch it and just let it tell you the story that it's telling you, and you can take it from there. Um, uh,
Yeah, and I agree. I mean, given that the viewer has some patience, it's a great movie.
but yeah, so the patience part, that is a little bit troubling. Um, Not about the movie, but about the people today. Uh,
I
you know,
mean,
but I think my parents were pinging on me about me not having attention span. So I think I'm probably griping about the same. I'm griping about
what is
young
this?
people the same way my parents were griping about me.
That's right.
So
And
and
and to and just to note, these older movies, especially like a movie like 2001: Space Odyssey, they had to do all this without a lot of the computer graphic technology we have today, and yet they were able
well,
to portray it so realistically.
yeah, and you can't. Yeah, so you can't. You do have to appreciate it for that. The execution and
Yeah,
the artistic expression in that respect. So, but I think that you won't be disappointed. You know,
and
so
plot wise as well, and thinking about it philosophically on
uh-huh,
where we are, right,
yeah,
in terms of our place in the universe.
right.
But
And of course, when I was growing up, 2001 was was a long time in the future. It's a long time in the future. I thought of 2001 probably the way you think about 2000, 2070. You know,
man, did you
uh,
think you're gonna make it to
and
2024?
no, no, we can talk about that another time. But the idea is like when I was growing up, what was happening. We had wild ideas about what was happening in the future, partly because of films like this that was telling us what the future was like. We haven't achieved. 2001 was 22 years ago, right?
Yeah, and
Um,
then like like how we have commercial airlines, they had commercial space
they
lines.
had commercial, and so we haven't achieved that. We have not advanced as far as the the vision of people who thought about the future. We have not achieved it by you know by by any means. We've achieved a lot of the things like the cell phone sort of fills in a lot of the cell phone, our ability to instantly communicate all around the world. None of that was really the future is different from the way it was perceived, where it was projected. But
Indeed,
um,
I mean the
so
future portrayed was basically a progression of technology that was known at that time,
uh-huh.
right?
And actually personally that whole concept is sort of very appealing to me, or very interesting to me, which is why I kind of like to do, for example, that I like to do steampunk.
Yeah.
And
No.
you know, steampunk is like you imagine that you're in the 1850s and you know about steam power, but you don't know about electricity. You don't know about, a lot of things, but you know how there's clockwork and gears and maybe some little electrical things that you might have in the future, and so you
Have you,
try to project
have
forward
you
from
watched
there.
Mortal Engines, the one where one city devours another, like a
No.
steampunk world? Oh, you will probably like that one.
Oh, okay.
Oh my gosh,
So
I
anyway,
yeah, okay. So we can talk about steampunk another time because really
we
there's a
need to wrap this up. Yeah.
there's a lot of steampunk movies and books out there too. So
Yeah.
yeah, with that said, we got to wrap this up. Leonard got you provide a surprising wealth of knowledge.
A surprising wealth? You're surprised?
Maybe I shouldn't be. Fine. Not a surprising wealth. Expected wealth. How about that?
Thank you.
So, okay. So, what am I going to talk about? Very briefly.
I don't know. Now I have to pay the price.
All right. So there's. Hey,
Go ahead. I'm just teasing.
Okay. There's this jellyfish shaped UFO. Should I play the video? I don't know how well this.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right. I have not watched this video yet, but
Yeah.
apparently, let's see how well this works from the same website. Okay, is there sound?
Oh, I heard about the jellyfish.
In the USS Nimitz. Well, tonight there's another video that is sending shockwaves through the UFO community. Stunning new footage of a purported UAP, or unidentified aerial phenomenon, as UFOs are now called. It resembles a jellyfish flying in the sky, its tentacles dangling, I guess, in the air. This video was released by UFO expert Jeffrey Corbell on his X page. Corbell says it was shot by the military using thermal imaging cameras as this, whatever it is, flew over a U.S. military base in Iraq. To be clear, News Nation has not independently verified the authenticity of the video, and other videos like this have been debunked in the past. Bottom line is, we don't know what this thing is or what it isn't right now, but we have reached out to the Pentagon for comment. News Nation senior national correspondent Brian Enton has been delving into it all afternoon. He joins us now. What can you tell us more
that's
about
compelling.
the circumstances of how this video was recorded and what time of day it was and how long this thing was flying around?
Yeah, Elizabeth, it certainly doesn't look like some of the other videos of UFOs that we've seen. Corbell says, right, the footage is from October of 2018. It was at a United States joint operations base taken in Iraq, and it was taken at night using a military thermal camera. And you can see when you look at it why the object has been nicknamed the jellyfish, because it does sort of look like a jellyfish, sort of with those tentacles there. You can see it floating across the sky as it reportedly moved above the military base. Now, it then moved over a body of water. This is where it gets interesting. According to Jeremy Corbell, it descended into the water where it was fully submerged for 17 minutes. This was also caught on video, apparently, before coming back out of the water and shooting off at a high rate of speed. The UFO researcher who obtained the video, who we've been talking about, Jeremy Corbell, he is the same person who first was able to uncover the Tic Tac video and reported on it, which was verified by the military as real, which is one of the reasons so many people are looking at this video so closely. That Tic Tac video, you mentioned it. It's
I'm impressed.
2004. It was shot by fighter pilots, and it shows what.
All right, we all know about the Tic Tac video.
Yeah. All right, I'm impressed.
I found this really intriguing. I mean,
yeah,
completely crazy.
Uh-huh. So I need to hear the comment. I need to hear the commentary from the Pentagon, and they'll say, "I don't know. We don't know."
I mean, the typical response would be, I mean, that's why they had that division to investigate UFOs for a while, right? So
right.
But
you know, if I didn't have the prompting from the UAP, unidentified UAP. Yeah. If I didn't have that prompting and you just showed me that video, you know what I would think?
What?
Somebody is holding there's a piece of debris that's on a piece of fishing line that's being held out of ahead of the
I guess
the camera.
context is everything,
Yeah.
you know?
So,
Right.
so notice that, the way the human mind works is that you just see something, and that if they didn't tell you that this was something that was very interesting,
Yeah.
you would look at it and go, no, that's something hanging from from a helicopter that's flying next to it, or, it looks like a piece of debris. It's not really, that's what it looks like to me. And then and then they use the term jellyfish. And so your mind is influenced by those things to think about this. And then they said, well, it descended into the water, and then it was there for 17 minutes, and then it came up and flew off at a high rate of speed. But they didn't show you that. But you will remember that. Or if you tell a whole bunch of people,
Right.
if you tell a whole bunch of people that, and you shape that into their mind, if we told 1 million people this, showed them this story, and gave them those words, it flew out and then it descended into the water, and then it emerged from the water and shot off at a high rate of speed. And you ask them, so then you go 2 years later and you ask, like a representative sample. A lot of people will tell you, this is what I believe. A lot of people will tell you that they actually saw a video of that.
But are you saying when you ask who are these a lot of people, they don't have a good answer?
No, you will fill it in. You will fill in the details.
Okay, got it.
You even though we didn't see what that guy said. What the guy said was, you heard, he said, and also, if you just looked at it without any context, if they weren't prompting you for all this stuff, then what would you think of it if you didn't have them telling you?
I would have thought, hey, look, it's just some random computer animated thing stuck in there.
Oh well, that is, that's not that. I'm not even that cynical. I would just say it's a piece.
Or it's some kind of like floating thing that.
I don't know. To me, it's a piece of debris that's hanging from a string that you can't see, because it's too thin. It's from a fishing line, or just it's just not emitting in the that's what I would say. If you didn't tell me what it was, if you didn't try to tell me, interpret it for me, that's how I would interpret it. But you show this to millions of people, and a year later, millions of people are going to say, "Oh yeah, that was a jellyfish. It looked just like a jellyfish." So anyway, this has been a long show, my friend.
It's been a really long show.
Yeah.
And I don't know why this is really strange. I've shared this video with a number of people while we're doing this, a little bit before too. Some of them have said they can't access this video.
Ooh, it's been covered up.
Isn't that strange?
Yeah.
Like, what's that about? I can access it. Can you access it?
I don't want to access it.
Fine, don't. I mean, I don't know. I'm accessing it just fine. So I don't know. I guess I will have to find out later.
Yeah.
What's going on?
Yeah.
Maybe the link I sent is bad. That's completely possible.
I don't know.
But for the sake of time, I don't want to troubleshoot the link to this video right in the middle of this video. That'd be kind of strange. So with that, we got to say, what is the ending words? Thank you for watching the show. We'll be back next week. The thing that you could
maybe subscribe.
Like, subscribe, share, do all that stuff.
Share it, send it to your friends.
youtube.com/shingo/streams, and you can look up SG2 on Space. You will find it. For those of you who unfortunately could not see the show live for some reason because the link I sent you is bad, just realize you can always find the show if you look up SG2 on Space and just click on the latest link.
Yeah, they seem to be pretty well organized these days. So
I think, yeah. So with everything, yeah, I'm able to access it. I don't want to hear my own voice talking while this is happening. So with that, anyways, thank you, supporters. Kyle Baker, Sam Welsh, John Graves. We'll be back next week, either Tuesday or Wednesday. For those of us watching this live, basically, stay safe if you're in Houston or this part of Texas.
Well, if you're anywhere, stay safe.
Okay. Fine. You're right. Stay safe. And
Good night.
Stay well, stay sane, and all that
Good night.
stuff. All right, good night.
Mwah.
I knew
Namaste.
it.